Greetings, my name is Dr. Ryan Murnane and I am the Assistant Vice President for Academic Policy and Compliance at Regent. Before this current position, I served as the Director of Assessment and Compliance for 8 years at Regent, where I did a lot of data analysis as well as publishing or presenting information so that administrators as well as accreditors could look at this to make decisions about the effectiveness of what we're doing and also trends and areas of improvement. And so I was requested to give just a brief overview of how we do things at Regent, how we do things from a vocational standpoint, but also from a research standpoint. I also teach at the doctoral level on things related to statistics, statistical analysis, research, design. So my approach is more from either a professional standpoint, but also from a research standpoint. But it's good because there's a lot of overlap with the analytic approach for media. I'm standing here in front of my garden. My wife and I love to garden. Over here is our grape, which we've tried for the first time this year, and it's producing really well, or at least it's growing. It hasn't produced anything yet. Over to my left are things like cucumbers, tomatoes, and I actually have more down the way. But I always love a garden because you start out small. If you're like us, you either use seedlings or you buy little plants, and you start out small and you do the correct things, like you make sure it's in good sunlight, it's adequately supported, it has water, and over time it then produces. And in the same way, research, design, and analysis holds to that same similar logic, in the way of there are different phases of research, design, and analysis. The first phase is to ask the question or to figure out what you want to study. Many times this is an administrator coming up and saying, hey, I would like to see the effectiveness of this, or an accreditor saying, does this actually lead to that, or did you have good outcomes? Learning outcomes is a big deal with that. Other things could just be, if you're a doctoral student, you might have an idea of a topic that you want to research. But that's phase one. It's like with a garden, what do we want to grow? How much do we want to grow? Phase two then is the tools, the instrumentation, the specific research question. You might want to study the effectiveness of classroom sizes on the student learning, but that's a very broad topic. So then phase two then, from the instrumentation standpoint, is what is your very specific idea or research question that you're going to focus on. Research question, if you've taken any classes with me, research questions are the key turning point or driving force of any research, because everything should be filtered through that topic. Also in that phase is the idea of realistic approaches. There's a lot of times people have an idea, and I say, well, how are you going to collect that data? How are you going to analyze that data? And many times students are like, I have no idea. Or that's not possible. Sometimes people say, oh, I want to research teachers or students in this area. So are you going to be able to collect that information? And they say probably not, because of permissions or other things. That would be like us trying to say, can you grow X here in Virginia Beach? And it's like, no, that doesn't grow in that climate. So then we have to then decide, what are we going to grow that's going to be successful in this climate? But from a research standpoint, you have to then figure out in that phase two, what is it you're going to research? And is it possible to collect data to answer that question? Because sometimes it's not possible. The third phase of analytics is the ability to analyze. Once you've collected the data, what are you using to analyze it? Are you using SPSS? Are you using SAS? Like these very advanced statistical approaches. Maybe you don't have access to those, so you use Excel. You can do a lot of great types of analysis in Excel. I know in this class, from speaking with your professor, that you guys are using or going to be learning about a lot of other platforms that are out there, like Google Analytics and other things like that. So the question is, does Google Analytics, if that's what you're going to use, does that software help you answer the research question that you have? Because a lot of these are predictive analysis, like predictive type approaches, descriptive statistics. But if your research question doesn't fall under predictive or descriptive, does that tool answer the research question? So again, that's where everything is synced up and ready to go. The other piece of this, as part of that phase three of the analysis, is the reliability. Is the data are the data points that you're collecting, are they reliable? Are they consistent? And this, especially when it comes to predictive analysis, because if something is not reliable, then it loses the power of predictability. And that's key. That's another key thing here. And so that's really important to take into consideration when you're analyzing is if you're using Google Analytics or some other platform, does it answer your research question, and is there a way to verify whether or not the data you're collecting is reliable? Because if it's not reliable, then it, like I said, it hurts your predictability approach. The final phase of this is the presentation. And presentation is all about who your audience is. If you're doing a dissertation, I sit on dissertation committees, we're looking more for like assumption analysis and tables and very boring things, as many people would say, but we're looking to see if it's reliable and what it tells us. For other audiences, like if you're in an organization and an administrator says, we want to see if this leads to this, well, they don't care about the assumption piece. I typically say administrators want to see charts and graphs. They want to see colors and they want to see pictures because they want to be able to look at something very quickly and to make a decision based off that information. So as a researcher, as someone who is training to be an analytics person, not only do you have to then verify, like in phase 3, that the data is or that the analysis is reliable, but that the person that's going to be using it, which might be an administrator, that they're able to understand it and apply it consistently. And I'll give a similar situation to this. We're preparing now for COVID-19, returning back to campus, as at the time of this video at Regent for on-campus students, and we're taking a lot of precautions into place. And we're doing social distancing, we're doing masks, all these various restrictions to help with safety. Well, there's certain classes where you can't require social distancing. We offer theater classes where people are practicing fighting, in drama, or they're getting close together. So in that situation, we can't necessarily require social distancing. So what we're doing then is we're saying, okay, in those particular classes, we're going to take temperatures we're adding a new restriction. We're adding a new restriction, which the professor has to take the temperature of the students just to make sure nobody's coming in with a fever. Pretty common at this time making this video. And so the question then rose up that says, how are the thermometers, the touchless thermometers, going to make it into the classroom for those particular classes? And there's just a handful of those classes, so it's not a lot. Well, as people are asking questions, it's going up an email chain. Well, just like the game Telephone, the question ended up being translated to, how are we getting thermometers in all of our classrooms? And it's like, whoa, that's not what the topic was at hand. The topic was those classes that deal with that can't require social distancing, which is probably like 8 or 9 classes. Versus all classrooms that are on campus. And so over time, the understanding of the question kind of evolved, and by the time it reached the decision maker in academic affairs, she was wise enough to go back to the original question, address that topic at hand. As a researcher going through these phases, or even when you present it on the back end, there's a very real possibility that you will say, okay, this demographic with this type of information is going to make this decision. While an administrator will run with it, where they'll say, oh, well, we can infer based on this small sampling that we could then, apply this across the board. And as a researcher, you have to be very clear in your presentation where the limitation and delimitations lie, because you don't want to present information and have a president, a governor, CEO, whoever, making policies and decisions across the board based off limited information or research that was designed to be very specific. That would be the equivalent of saying cucumbers grow really well in Virginia Beach and tomatoes grow really well in Virginia Beach, and you say, oh, well, let's start planting coconut trees. And it's like, I don't think coconut trees are going to grow here. And it's like, but these plants grow, therefore, and it's like, no. Cucumbers, tomatoes grow well here. It doesn't mean that coconut trees. So it's important in your presentation to also ensure that you are able to communicate where the limitations and delimitations are within your analysis, because you don't want somebody who might not be as trained as you are in research and analysis to start trying to apply the findings in this research in other areas, only because then they may question your integrity of, or your knowledge of research and the integrity of your data if they find that it's not, when they're trying to apply outside of that realm, that is not working. It's like, well, it's not working because it wasn't designed to work that way. So that's important in your presentation to ensure that you're able to articulate the limitations and delimitations. So to review real quickly, research, data analytics, whether it's, vocationally somebody's asking me to research the effectiveness of something, or helping on a dissertation committee, somebody doing it from a scholarly standpoint, or even from a media standpoint, it really falls into 4 categories. You have the idea of developing a concept of what you want to research, which is also developing kind of the research question, understanding the tools of how you're going to collect the data, and understanding the variables you want to collect. For example, if you're wanting to down the road compare differences by gender, you see how women did or responded versus males, then you need to get the gender demographic during that phase too. So you need to think about how you're going to analyze it on the back end in order to develop a strong data collection process. So idea, data collection, data analysis, and then findings presentation. Hopefully, as a researcher, you are able to involve yourself with all 4 processes, but it's very, very possible at times that you're only brought in at certain points. And I would then encourage you, if you ever find yourself in that situation, to reach out to the people who are in those other phases to ensure a consistent understanding as well as a consistent development. Because you don't want to have to try to analyze something on the back end to answer a research question in which the data collection was not designed to answer that research question, but yet you're responsible to try to analyze it to research. That's happened before. It's very difficult. I would just say as you're developing this, as you're researching this, as you're thinking about different tools, just don't think about the tools of analyzing and presenting information, but think about how that tool can help answer the research question or the topic or the data that you're going to pull, and view all this as one unit. So I am actually very much involved with various students with their research design and dissertation and projects. So if you ever have questions or thoughts about the approach, feel free to email me. My email is below. And hopefully you guys enjoy the class and can apply these very foundational concepts to as you then start to study the analytics in media. Thank you very much and have a good day.